Okay.
Thanks, Aaron, and welcome everybody. Ailish is sick and she may join us, but she's trying to get to a doctor. So I don't know if she'll join us or not. So she asked me to chair this meeting, which I will do. So welcome. We haven't been together since June. And let's start with the approval of the June 10th minutes, which was kind of a packed agenda. Does anybody have any comments, changes for that agenda? I don't see anybody. If not, can somebody make a motion to approve the minutes and somebody second them? Anybody?
Sure, I'll motion to approve them.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, I'm going to call on people as I see them. David Lashinsky,
Approve.
Leroy.
Was not here, abstain.
Okay, Karen.
Approve?
Deb? Deb Thompson? You're muted.
Yes, approve. I'm looking at my calendar to make sure I was there. I'm
Oh,
sure I was.
okay.
Yeah.
John Van
I was not in attendance. Sorry.
So you abstain?
I abstain. Yeah.
Okay, Andrew?
I have to abstain because I was not in
Okay,
attendance.
Chris?
I approve.
And I approve. I think that's everybody on the committee who's on here. Did I miss anybody? Oh, Melissa's here. Melissa, we're just talking about the minutes from the June 10th meeting. I'm not sure if you were there.
I don't think I was there.
Okay, so does that mean you abstain?
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
not coaching you, but
Thank you.
so the minutes are approved. And the first item on the agenda is a discussion on the proposed permit fee changes for food establishments. So who's doing that?
That'll be Roland from the Public Health Department. And Roland, do you have access?
Yeah, I think John is also here, the current interim director. John.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, really quickly, and then I'll hand it off to Roland. Just want to thank you all for the opportunity today to allow us to present this. Roland and his team have done a lot of work, and regionally, we've been doing a lot of work on trying to update to the FDA standards. We think it's important, critical work to protect food safety in the Commonwealth and across our Metro Public Health Collaborative region. So we're appreciative of this group coming together and allowing us to share and get some feedback. So with that, I'll hand it off to Dr. Roland Lanka.
Thank you, John. Aaron, am I able to share my screen, please?
Yeah, you should be able to share it now.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right. First, I just want to say thank you to Aaron and the team and just allowing us to be able to talk about this fee schedule, update our fee schedule, just to the small business community. I'm not aware, but I think few months ago we met and when Shigeru was still here, we met and we talked about this a little bit. So China and I, we just want to just meet with everybody else because it seems to be a little bit more sensitive topic, and we want to have this discussion with the public and the people who are mostly going to be impacted. So we can have a discussion about it. John and I wouldn't know a great deal about all the other factors that are involved, but we're here. And if you have any questions before we leave for the day, we'll do our best to have that discussion. So without further ado, I'll just dive a little bit into why we're here today for. So basically, what John was saying earlier was that we are planning to update our fee schedule. We made some changes to the current fee schedule our current fee schedule kind of it looks like this. It's mostly based on our seating capacity. So people who have more seating in their food establishment are more likely to pay a higher fee for their food establishment. And it's also based on the square footage. So if you have people who have larger um, establishment like grocery store, like stop and shop, they tend to pay higher fees because they have a bigger uh, food establishment. So if you look out on your right hand side, I do have a snippet of what our current fee schedule looks like. So if you see like people who have a bigger square footage, a larger square footage, like above over 7,500 square feet, they pay $600 for their permit. And
Excuse me, is
people-
that an annual fee?
yes, this is an annual fee.
Thank you.
And then you have people who have limited retail establishment. We talk about maybe a gas station and stuff. They have a standard fee of $120. But then when you go to the seating, you have people with 1 to 49 seats. They pay around $240.
Can I interrupt for a second? Can you clarify what this is for? At first it said restaurants and food. Is this seating capacity like the Elias's mobile station doesn't have seating capacity and Stop and Shop doesn't have seating capacity? What is this for?
Okay, so like you said, Stop and
Process.
Shop. So like I said, the permits are based on two categories. The first category is seating capacity, and the second category is the square footage of the establishment. So Stop and Shop does not have seating, you are correct, but they fall in the category of square footage because they are a larger establishment. We base their fees on the size of that establishment. So if you see like I would assume maybe some Stop and Shop over 7,500 square feet. The annual permit is $600. And then you have other food establishment like restaurants, like your full restaurants that have seating, that people go in and sit down for dining. They have seating. So if they have like, I don't know, 100 seats, they fall in that category between 100 and 149. They will pay $462 for their establishment.
Okay, last question. Fees for what? What are these fees for?
Oh, okay. This is fees for their food establishment, for their permits, like the health department permits that they get to run their food establishment in Brookline. This is the fees for their permit, the health department fees that are associated for the permit that we issue these food establishments.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you for that. All right, so now here's my question: is why are we updating our fees now? We want to say it's about time that we update our fees because our current fees is over 2 decades, for over 20 years. I think the last time they updated the fees was 2003. That's when they updated the fees. So now it's about time to kind of see what other people are doing, other city, other town are doing, and just kind of still contemporary with what people are doing. So we feel like it's time for us to update our fees because it's been over 20 years since we use our current fee schedule. The second reason is that like John was saying earlier, we want to restructure our fees so that it aligns with the FDA food code. The FDA food code is basically based on different risk level, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later. We are currently working on moving our current fees so that it aligns with the FDA's food code, and that's the reason why we're updating the fees. There's other reasons will include that we want to make sure that our fees correlate with the actual risk associated with the various type of food operation. So different food operation have different risks that are associated with it. So we want to make sure that the fee reflects those risk level. The other reason we want to make sure that we issue our fees that are associated with the time and expertise that our staff spends in reviewing and doing inspections, because each risk level has different number of inspections that we gotta do per year. And just based on that risk level, including plan review, if there's any changes going on with the establishment, the time that we spent, we want to make sure that our fees correlates with that. The last one kind of aligns with what I just said. Is basically we analyzing the risk of foodborne illness of this risk high risk food establishment, and because of that, we are spending more time, we are spending more staff resources to inspect those areas. So we just want to ensure that those time that we spend reflects in our fee schedule. Uh, just like I was saying earlier, I want to give a little bit of breakdown on what the FDA food code and risk level definitions are. So when we talk about risk one, is the lower risk on the FDA food code. So basically, there's minimum food preparation going on at this establishment. Usually, it's the convenience store or coffee shop. Those areas usually have like prepackaged food products. We inspect those places once a year. Uh, Bridge two, there's usually like a little bit more complex prep going on, like a Pizza Hut or something, or places that it makes sandwiches. Those are rich two. We would think about maybe your Dunkin' Donuts or your McDonald's. So those places are rich too. There's not a lot of preparation going on, but there's some type of hands-on, like people are touching food with their hands and prepping it. So those are considered rich two level. And then your risk three and your risk four. So risk three is usually the higher risk. So there's more going on at the risk three level. So there's more handling of raw meat. So people that cutting raw meat and put it into the refrigerator to cool it down. Like there's a lot of high temperature issue going on at this risk. So there's 3 times a year when we're doing inspection at this risk level. The last risk level is risk four, which more of deals with populations and specialized food preparation going on. So we're talking about hospitals, nursing homes, daycare, places that do processing food, reheating, bulk food leftover. Places that also do specialized food like sushi, reduce oxygen packaging so that they can extend the lifespan of their food products, or curing. So those are higher risk level because there's a lot of processes going on, and at the same time, we also serving people who are considered vulnerable populations, like in a nursing home or in a daycare, for example. So because of that, the risks that are associated with this risk level, it is considered the highest risk level in the FDA food code.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Level
I-
4. If the daycare just has, if the kids are bringing in their own foods, that they're not being prepared on site, how does that work into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So daycare that I'm speaking of is daycare that's actually doing food prep on site, that they have a whole full kitchen that they're doing
Okay.
food prep. That's that one I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. So currently we do have 41 food establishment in Brooklyn that are considered risk one. And then you have we have most of our food establishment are risk two, about 158 of them are risk two. And then we have 53 risk three establishments, and then we have 20 risk four establishments. So this new framework we've talking about is going to change the dynamic of how our current fee schedule was established. So most of the establishment that we dealt with in the past where that they were considered risk two would change, the risk level would change because of this new definitions that we've established based on the full code. So those who will be considered risk three and risk four, there's going to be frequent inspections. There's a higher potential of foodborne illness, so they will have a higher fees associated with that permit. And then you have your risk one and risk two that have either minimal or very less risks associated with the food products. We have a lower fees, permit fees, annual permit fees. So we propose two options. While we've currently, this is currently still in the planning phase, we've already have this discussion with the town administrator. And John and we will be having a discussion with the select board to get the approval. So we were able to craft two options to present to select board to see what is more convenient, not convenient, but that will have a lesser impact on business community. Because I mean, there's going to be more questions and more concerns because, like I said, a dynamic has changed here. Risk category is going to change. People are going to see different fees associated with their permits. So there's going to be some questions here. So we propose two options. The first options currently the annual revenue that we generate for our current fee schedule is $78,270. The first options, risk one will pay $170, risk two will pay $280, risk three will pay $390, and then risk four will pay $540. If we go with that options, we only raising our annual revenue by $1,600.
Roland, can you do me a favor? Can you back up for a second? Can you say those amounts again? I got 170, 390, 540, but I think I missed one.
It's on the screen, David. Are you looking?
Oh, okay. I'll pop it back. Go ahead. Sorry, Roland.
No worries. Are you okay? Are you able to see my screen?
No. Don't worry about it. I'll look afterwards.
Okay. All right. So that was the first option. The second options that we propose will raise our revenue to about 80,000, a little over $80,000 by gaining $4,169 for that year. That's our second option. And in that option, we will be charging risk 180, risk two, 290, risk three, 400, and risk four, $550. So these are the two options that we propose when we offer our new framework.
Roland, can I jump in here for just half a second?
Yeah, sure, John, go ahead.
The other thing I just want to note is, this, and I appreciate Roland putting the slide together, this isn't a revenue generator, right? It's really about rebalancing the fees based on the workload of having to go back to some of these higher risk categories. So we just wanted to present this just to acknowledge that it is a major change, but it's not about raising revenue for the town. It's really about trying to more equally balance based on the workload on the inspection side. Thanks, Roland.
Thank you, John. Yeah, John is absolutely correct. I think the reason why I just put this slide here is just so that people be able to kind of get a picture of where we're going. And I know there's gonna be a question about how much are you raising if you raise the fees or you change the fees. So I just want to make that information public so that people are able to see it and analyze and digest it and just make it for self-awareness.
I have one question, which is, are the numbers of businesses in any of these categories changing based on the redefinition of the risk categories? Or are the original, let's say those 41 businesses in risk one, are there still only 41 businesses in risk one, or have some of the ones from risk two been downgraded to risk one levels?
Good question, David. You're absolutely right. So when we look at our existing establishment and we categorize them based on risk level, some of the establishment that were considered that were paying higher fee, they got downgraded to risk one. So for example, if a Stop and Shop, which was paying $600, and they don't do any processing, they don't have raw meat. This is just an example, but they were paying 600 because of the square footage of their establishment. They could possibly be downgraded to Rich 2, so they'll be paying less compared to what they were paying before. As compared to a mom and pop establishment that does sushi, for example, they will be bumped up to Rich 4 because they produce they prepare the specialized food in the establishment.
Okay.
So,
So I do have one other question here, and that is in the very beginning, you talked about limited retail.
Yeah.
And the example given was the garage at the corner, which as far as I know, they don't sell hot dogs or any other prepared food. What about regular retail that has no food per se, but then at an event once a year, they'll put out a cotton candy stand where they'll say, okay, we're going to have hot chocolate available. Does that change the the requirements, the risk rewards, or the permitting requirements for those activities?
Absolutely not. I think what you are describing there would be considered a temporary food event. So if they are hosting what would be considered temporary food events, that their permit is separate from their annual permit. They will have to apply for the temporary food event permit with us, and that temporary food is permit is only good for 14 days. If they decide to actually host that event for 14 days. But most events that happen in Brooklyn happen like maybe a couple of days or a day or so.
Okay.
But that
so,
does not change. That does not change their risk level.
so there's no comparison here head to head, but my assumption is that a small sushi restaurant or a small risk 3 or risk 4 restaurant, their fees are going to go up, but many are going to go down. Is that right?
That is correct, and that's one of the concern that we have with this fee schedule and changing it to align with the FDA food code. Um, you are correct. Like if a sushi was a rich two because of the size of their seating capacity, they will be bumped up to a risk 4 because the specialized food that they prepared at that food establishment.
So
And
then
have you done any
potentially,
analysis to understand how many of our food establishments are going to go up in price and how many are down and how much? I mean, is it $10 or is it a couple of hundred?
Seems like it's a couple of hundred, and for those that are going from like a small restaurant to like a risk 4 restaurant, right? If we could go back a couple slides for a small
Yeah.
restaurant,
Yeah.
it was only
Okay.
240. Now they're going to be upwards of 540, I think.
Yeah, so if you are sushi, then you are found in this category right on top here that said 240. If you are a sushi establishment or you are an establishment that's doing reduced oxygen packaging, for example, and you are found here because you have like 1 to 49 seating capacity, but because your risk level was bumped up,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be paying 540.
Okay.
If
So,
if
yeah,
we
so
decide to
there,
go with the first options.
okay. Do people have questions, comments? Can you take your slides down so I can see everybody?
Sure.
Thanks. But they may have to come back up again if people have questions, but does anybody have questions, comments?
yeah,
Yeah, and I have a
I had a couple of
question.
questions here. By the way, I want to tell you that I do appreciate and understand the efforts required not only to reassess risk based on modern science, but also to then go back and look at our existing businesses to say, okay, how should they get slotted in? Because it's really a different way of actually looking at the activity. So I think you did a great job. It was very clear how that was explained. So thank you. My question, though, kind of gets back to that differential question that Ann asked earlier, which is, oh, how many of our smaller businesses now that were under one categorization will all of a sudden have their fees doubled or even, potentially gone up, you know, 3 times, because now it's recognized that their activity actually is a riskier activity. And is that something that they would be both prepared to handle, willing to handle, and afford, given the kind of establishment that we're dealing with, especially at the smaller end, the smaller scale of the operation to begin with?
It looked like the biggest delta was a couple of $100. Is that right?
Yeah.
I
And
yeah, I don't
we
know,
have
because
1 to
I don't see what
49.
those numbers actually are. I mean, I'd love to go ahead and look at
Well, it was I don't have the numbers in front of me, but from a 1 to 49 seat sushi place to a risk 4 sushi place was it a couple of hundred?
Yeah, so if there was a sushi place that felt in the category, let's say the seating capacity was between 100 to 49 seating capacity, and it was a mom and pops, but then they prepared sushi. In there, they were paying 240 previously, but now they're gonna pay 540 if we go with the first options.
So
If we go
300.
with the second option, is to be paying 550. So it's a couple of $100, yeah.
Okay.
and
Anybody?
I was just going to say one follow-up question is, it seems like there is no I guess sliding scale at this point in terms of the amount of risk. In other words, if you have a bigger establishment with more seating, more traffic, more food being prepared, that there's somehow baked into those numbers a recognition that, oh yeah, if I'm doing a lot more, have a lot more exposure, there actually is, it's riskier than a smaller establishment that has less exposure because not as many people eat there and could get sick.
Yeah, I think it's based on the type of food they're prepping. It's not based on the exposure of it's not based on traffic. The amount of people that are going to the establishment is based on the type of food and the way the food is prepared. For example, if you preparing a raw meat, compared to preparing I don't know, maybe a Dunkin' Donut sandwich, a raw meat is much more riskier than prepping a Dunkin' Donuts sandwich. So even though Dunkin' Donut may be very busy in the morning with more people going and getting a coffee and stuff like that, the process of prepping food is quite less riskier than somebody who is cooking raw meat, or cutting raw meat and cutting vegetable. There's a potential of cross contamination in a risk 4, and a potential of bacteriological processes in risk 4, compared to a risk 2, a Dunkin' Donut or so.
Okay. When you guys are coming up, and by the way, I recognize that there's different risks inherently within the actual activity. There is also that notion that, well, if I'm preparing food for a larger audience, I'm going to have more of the food out exposed for a longer period of time than for a smaller establishment. Was there an attempt to say, to also to graduate this along that second metric of seating capacity, which gets to the traffic, in conjunction with a risk capacity now, or additional understanding based on the actual food preparation algorithms?
Yeah.
It's almost like a two-sided matrix instead of a single vector for looking at it. And by the way, guys, can you hear the noise in the background here? Or should I
Yes.
try and mute that?
Somebody.
Let me try and mute that. Hold on.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, yeah. I'll wait a little bit till David comes back.
Does anybody else have questions?
And I do, it's David.
Yeah.
So I have a question and a request. The question is, Roland, how is this going to impact, say, an operation like a bakery, number one? And then number two, and the request I would have is I'd like to have the committee take a look at like businesses, what they're changing, what they are now and what they're going to change to. So that way we can assess what the impact is going to be on businesses. Because I can appreciate that we're doing this by risk, Roland, and I totally understand it, but I want to understand what the overall impact is going to be. I understand the revenue differential that you described on option A and option B, but I just want to see how it's going to impact businesses, because if we talk about restaurants in general, they are under a lot of pressure, their margins are compressed, and I think that we as a committee need to at least understand how this is going to impact the different businesses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think once, excuse me. I think once John and I we able to sit down and actually meet with the select board and everything, the goal is to be able to print we can share that documents with Aaron and the community and the committee. Uh, um, but the goal is currently while we're still talking about assessing the fee schedule, we also are working on our computer system and set up to be able to assign all of these rates to the individual establishment. And we've been working with our IT department to do that. But once we complete that assignment, we will definitely be able to share that document with the public so that everybody knows what risk level they are.
But Roland, will this be before it goes before the select board?
Yes, I want to, John, you can help support me on this one. We planning this planning to go live November of 2026. It's not happening this year, so it's gonna go out live November of 2026. That's when we do the annual renewal for food establishments. So we still have more time to do the IT stuff. We've been talking to our IT already. So I want to say I'm only saying that because the logistics aspect of the IT department, they are pretty much tight right now. So, but our plan is to have all of this stuff in a setup before our 2026 renewal year.
No, I understand what you're saying, Roland, but my request is that we see this raw data in advance to understand, as an example, Cuddy's as an example of a business. They're currently at this rate.
Yeah.
Under the proposal A, proposal B, they're either going to go to this rate or this rate, so
Got
that
it.
our committee can sort of impact what the economic impact is going to be on these businesses. I'm not questioning the risk-based element. I totally buy into what you guys are saying. But I just want to be able to understand what the impact is going to be, since we're a small business development committee. We just want to make sure that these fees are not onerous. We've had previous discussions about outside dining and other things, and we were able to make an impact. And I think that it's under our responsibility to be able to analyze it a little further, other than just respecting that it's a risk-based element.
Actually,
Yeah.
I would want to add, David, that it's not just simply a risk-based element, but it's also a volume of serving. It's like how many people are being served. So there's that volume metric is currently missing from the existing parameters, and I would like to see something where that is fleshed out, so that in effect, even if you have a company or a business that's in a higher risk area, if they're serving fewer people, there's a recognition that, okay, they shouldn't be charged more than Stop and Shop is charged, because they've got, a small risk, but it's a magnified small risk over many more people. And also, to be frank, they're in a much better position to handle a slightly higher fee structure, like from a percentage perspective on revenue, than some of the smaller businesses are.
Is that true? That I'm not a public health professional, but if I have a restaurant and I'm preparing food safely as opposed to not safely, um, does it matter how many people I'm serving? Is the risk different? I mean, I guess the risk is higher that somebody would get sick, but doesn't it isn't the risk? I mean, when you read about Chipotle and people getting sick and stuff, it's not because they're serving so many people, it's because somebody in their kitchen shouldn't have been serving anybody, or the prep was wrong or something like that. Is that, I'm looking at John and Roland because I don't know the answer to that question, but how is that risk assessed?
So I think that the risk assessment is mostly due to the risk of foodborne illness. So and like I was saying earlier, if you go to Stop and let's bring Stop and Shop for example, or Walmart for example, they're a pretty big company. They have the money to pay. They don't really care about the money. Now I understand the economic factors associated with that, but the risk foodborne illness, like if you go to Walmart, for example, it's mostly prepackaged food. Like the food packaged in a manufacturing company that is regulated by the federal government before it comes to Walmart. The risk of it causing foodborne illness is a lot lesser than a risk of foodborne illness in a sushi community that are prepping raw meat, raw fish and serving it to their population. I think that's how the risk is assessed. It's not assessed based on the amount of people who buy the food. I don't know if I got myself clear here.
Yeah, thanks. Andrew, did you?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Just being in the food business, I actually I wanted to mention a few things, but I take not offense, but I disagree with the Walmart comment just now about they're a big corporation, they can afford it. I think that's a very dangerous line to use
I'm sorry.
publicly.
Okay.
And I don't mean it personally. I just, as somebody who had a larger food operation, people quick, oh, they're big, there's bigger expenses. And actually Walmart and a lot of those stores have food processing in-house as well. A lot of them do kitchens. But I do agree, and I have experience in this being a kosher food operation where we have double supervision. And we do pay higher kosher supervision rates based upon our needs to the supervising agency. So I do think it is a fair statement that if a place has more risk, then there's higher cost involved. I personally would like to say, yes, we need to raise prices, fees. I'm against raising fees, but we need to raise fees to compensate the amount of inspector time. And if you have a place that's a higher risk and you have to go 3 or 4 times a year, no professional is making less than $100 an hour, and they're spending a few hours at a inspection. So a $300 a year or $400 a year fee may be a reasonable fee. I don't like the idea of saying just because other towns have higher fees, we need to raise those fees. I think it should be based, as you were saying, based on the risk and based on the work, but not to make this something that the town says, oh, we've raised the fees. So the common victuals license or the other licenses, those shouldn't just get raised because we can raise them, because those don't really take any work at all. That's just a rubber stamp. I mean, I just paid my LLC fees yesterday of $500 for the state just to stamp a piece of paper. So that does hurt when you have multiple LLCs. I do agree that we should base this upon the needs of the operation and the use of the health department of what you guys have to do to control the food safety.
Yeah, and if I
And I wanted
could,
to
really
thank
quickly,
you.
Roland, if I
Yeah,
could,
go
just,
ahead.
no, Andrew, I completely agree with you that ultimately that's what this is, right? Is that we are having to go back and do inspections repeatedly with some of these higher risk restaurants. And so this is really to try to bake in a little bit more fairness. I know that's hard to hear when it's a smaller restaurant, and I want to make a comment on that as well. But if we're having our employees are having to go back repeatedly, the fee should be based on that and not otherwise. And then to the point about I think it was David's point earlier about kind of the size of the restaurant. One of the challenges, and I don't know if we have data to measure this, is you may have a small square footage or small number of seats, but you might be doing a lot of takeout. And so we're not capturing that in the seating arrangement either. And so that's just another challenge. It's a complexity, and we can work to address it. But I just wanted to at least acknowledge that you might still be doing a lot of preparation of food and distributing of food, and that might lead to even higher risk. And it's just not, there's no way to capture that based on square footage.
Yeah, John, I agree with you. And, you know, again, I'm the biggest libertarian here and, you know, of anti-fees for not, you know, fees that don't make sense just because they can raise fees. I'm against, but I do think that if it's warranted by the amount of work, I wish there was a way, and maybe there is, but to almost have it as a base fee at a standard rate. But then if you do need, if there's warranted more inspections, meaning that you fail an inspection and they have to come back, now put the onus on the individual store or the individual establishment so that, listen, if we have to send the inspector 5 times in 3 months, I know with our kosher, when we have a big operation and they need 3 supervisors to come in overnight, we pay for that. And we're somewhat happy to pay it because we know we're doing the volume. Or, you know, in this case, if somebody's not keeping their place clean or they're not doing what they're supposed to do, let them shoulder that burden, but don't put it across everybody else. You know, so maybe keep the fees I agree, cover the cost, but then you get 3 inspections at a high risk place a year. If you cause us to have to come back again, there's going to be a fee. And the square footage doesn't make sense because a Walmart, you know, that is, or I know an establishment now that's going to be large square footage but have very little seating. It's the same kitchen. So I think we could think this out a little bit and make it fair across the board.
Okay, thanks. Chris has his hand up, and then I think you don't want to vote or anything from us today. This is informational, is that correct? Because we need to move on, I think. We have another agenda item that I think is going to warrant a lot of discussion as well. So John, I'm looking at you or Roland. We can continue this conversation, is that correct?
Certainly.
Okay. All right, Chris, and then we'll move on.
Be brief then. I guess I've heard it mentioned and referenced, but this kind of comparison to other communities, I haven't seen any data yet as to what other communities are charging to kind of justify these new fees. And then secondly, I guess just the 2 options that were proposed, the difference was $10 per category between the 2 options. I guess just some justification for why there's the difference between the 2 options, because it's just a matter of $10 per category.
Yeah, if I could take the first one, Christopher, and then I'll let Roland speak really quickly. So I do know there are other communities that have made this transition to the risk-based. So that's sort of, I wouldn't say we were at the leading edge or the bleeding edge, but we are certainly probably one of the earlier adopters. I haven't done a full census of the Commonwealth, but like Kingston, Concord, Milton all come to mind as communities that have done this. I'll have to look and see what their actual fee schedule is. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. But that is certainly work that we can do. We can talk to the staff and dig into those numbers a little bit more.
Okay, so that and then the comparison we were talking about for the businesses in town, what they're paying now and what category they'd be in, and what they would pay would also be helpful.
Okay, thank you, Ann.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to hearing back from you at some point. Okay, thanks.
Thank you all.
So next, another meaty conversation on the draft outdoor lighting warrant article, the dark skies article. And hopefully people, I'm not quite sure how to do this. The warrant article, did people have a chance to read the information about this? Did people know what it is? EDAB, I believe you saw the EDAB memo that we did at our meeting in August, and we had another conversation about it last night. Jessica did a cover memo. There have been changes. The the first EDAB meeting we had was based on the draft that the proponents had done. We gave them a lot of feedback. They took some of it and not all of it, but Jessica did a terrific memo describing the original, the differences between the original and what was actually submitted in the warrant article. And I believe the language of the actual warrant article is now available. The select board will approve it tonight, but we didn't have that last night at our EDAB meeting. So I'm not sure how to do this. I don't think we need, hopefully people have taken a look and know what this is, because otherwise that's a long presentation.
I would love to know. I was just looking. I didn't see the changes to the draft of that assessment. So I'd love it. Jessica
Okay.
did a great job last time. A quick synopsis of what some of the changes were might be very helpful.
Okay, why don't you do that, Jess? But just before you do that, I'm assuming that everybody is at least aware of this issue. And if you're not, now's the time to say so, because we're not gonna get into the whole background unless a lot of people want to spend the time to do that. Is that fair? Okay, Jess, you're on.
So biggest change in terms of their revised version versus their original much longer thing is that it's now going to be a general nuisance bylaw. Their 1/10 foot candle is the equivalent of one of those like dimmer indoor parking garage style lightings. They're really looking to reduce glare, and the last version was very much encompassing wildlife, the dark skies concept of making sure that it's not overarching too much. Their newer language really focuses on a full REM cycle, both for humans and wildlife impacted by this. In terms of the average number of foot candles that most businesses have is between 5 and 10, which is more of the average for the safety aspect and things. EDAB in the original version had really emphasized looking at what the insurance companies require of businesses in order to make sure that they're following their own the rules and regulations that the insurance company is putting on for safety and accessibility purposes. It's been brought up a bunch about the fact that our sidewalks are all different styles. We have brick, we have concrete, we have some tar, and the levels of those change in terms of grading. So the safety aspect of people being able to walk safely in dimmer light. And it is going to be across the board, like town-wide, residential and commercial areas. And it is still under a retroactive concept, so that all businesses would have to be, and all residents would have to be in compliance with this. And Dan Bennett is the building commissioner, is the stated person under both versions that would be responsible for making sure that this is happening. He has stated in the planning board meeting that happened on the 20th of August that it's not feasible in terms of staff time to do this, and that typically the lighting plans and things aren't encompassed as part of the overall process that's in place currently. So realistically, staff time, it would be just as the tree bylaw was that we had discussed for last town meeting, where it is a matter of it would require more staff, which we don't currently have. And that it would just doesn't make sense. It would be complaint based is essentially what would end up happening. Trying to increase the compliance time in terms of what they're thinking. The fee structure is still at the same $100 for the first violation, and then $300 after that, which is a bit steep in terms of what the conversation's been with EDAB and planning board as well. The general response from both planning board and EDAB thus far has been that it's very unrealistic. So we're really hoping that during the public hearings that I imagine SBDC will take up, EDAB's going to also be requesting a public hearing, will be to really try to kind of hone in on the fact that there needs to be some more in-depth look at these insurance concepts and making sure that what they're asking for with this new 1/10 foot candle really is realistic for all of our areas, and really Both planning board and EDAB would really love to see the commercial areas just taken out of this. Because one of the big ones that keeps coming up specifically, and not to call them out necessarily, but just the one that flags most is like the Coolidge Corner neon. That would be beyond violation, which just doesn't make any sense. So general consensus is unrealistic. Staff time is just not there. So hopefully public hearing wise, we can kind of drive this home, but it hasn't really been toned down. It's just a lot less pages and just a general nuisance bylaw instead of a zoning code change.
A couple of things. Deb just asked about to connect you mentioned the tree requirements. There was a warrant article, I think last town meeting or 2 town meetings ago about about cutting down trees and having to replace them and having to get permission to cut down trees even on your own property and stuff like that. And the Erin Shute came to a whole lot of meetings and said that there was nobody that she didn't have staff to work on the compliance for that article. And she was very clear about that. The article passed anyway. So Dan Bennett's basically saying the same thing. Last night at our EDAB meeting, we had another conversation about this. We still have a lot more questions, and we're having a public hearing at our next meeting, which is September 29th in the evening. We're not having a meeting in October because of all the Monday holidays. But a couple of the architects, several of us don't have any idea what 1/10 of a candle is and what that means in terms of actual light. And the architects on the group explained to us that that doesn't even exist. You can't measure on a light meter anything. I think you said less than 1 candle. I mean, it just, and their maximum here was 1/10 of a candle. I know that David, let me call on John first, and I know that David Lashinsky took a walk around Coolidge Corner with one of the proponents, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what you learned, but let me go to John first.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, I just want to add a little bit of nuance to something you just said, which was very helpful. The reminder as to the history where the tree article was concerned, which, I joined with people in this meeting as being one of those who raised a lot of questions about the practicality and the parameters of the tree article. But we'll leave that aside for now. The argument that I think prevailed with town meeting and others, where the tree article is concerned, is that it would be self-funding, that after the first year or so, the fees that would be imposed would then pay for the continued enforcement of the tree article. People can debate that if they wish. I'm not 100% convinced myself, but some pretty good study was done on it as to the experience that Cambridge has had with the funding through enforcement of fines of their tree article. So don't necessarily assume that in this case the concerns over the enforceability of this lighting article will simply be ignored at town meeting. There was a particular reason why the tree article survived those arguments. I'm not sure. I don't want to prejudice myself on this, but I too see a lot of obstacles to this article, which the select board hasn't taken up yet. One quick other note. I happen to know from personal experience, a lot of the urge to do this is driven by, it's called dark skies, which I'm in total sympathy with. However, I think where problems have cropped up has been much more in, say, single family residential zones, where, one person has extreme lighting on their property and it gets into the windows and, essentially lights up neighboring properties. I have a feeling at the end of the day, the focus of this discussion is going to shift, for the time being to residential zones, because I think, as people have already pointed out, enforcing this in commercial zones is it has so many obstacles that, I think there'll be a lot of concerns that continue to emerge as we discuss this.
One of the things, as I mentioned, EDAB has now discussed this twice. I don't know if this committee got the copies of the original EDAB list of issues, but the first thing we suggested is that they delete the commercial zones from this article, which they did not do. They're treating every area of town exactly the same in terms of the amount of light that you can shed on neighbors, for example. And in Coolidge Corner, if you have an outdoor light on, it's on your neighbor because that's how the stores are. I mean, as John said, if you read it from the point of view of being in Chestnut Hill, I mean, even in Coolidge Corner where I live, it would be hard to do that in a residential zone. But it just doesn't make sense. But David Lashinsky?
Yeah, I'm happy to certainly first review the discussion that I had in the walk around Coolidge Corner. But then I also wanted to go through, and I'm going to give you my um, opinion and assessment of this article and our stance, what our stance should be with it. So Clint is one of the petitioners. He's a neighbor. He and I, talk, semi-frequently whenever we see each other. So when I mentioned that this would be very detrimental to the businesses, he suggested that we take a walk around Coolidge Corner, like on a to see what the issues were, which I agreed to. I wanted to try to understand how they were looking at this. And a couple of things that he pointed out right away were the fact that, it was like 9, 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, is that, the bank building on the corner was completely lit up as if it was in business during the day. Now, most of the other businesses around had reduced lighting, but that was one that he was talking about. It was so egregious for the butterflies and all the bugs. I looked at it as saying, well, it's just kind of a waste of energy, of light. But it also could be a requirement on the insurance side. We then looked at some of the street lights as we walked around that are provided by the town. And he made the comment that, oh, gee, look at that. It's shining into, or it has that potential to be shining into the second floor residence above the retail strip on Beacon Street. And he says, isn't that terrible that you have somebody who's moved in there and then the light goes on and they have to invest in blackout shades to get some protection from the light. And I looked at him and said, wait a second, this is an urban area. It is full of noise and light. Anybody who is sensitive to light should not be moving into Beacon Street. This is not for them. They should go out to the countryside if that's an issue. He just laughed and dismissed that entire thought. It's like, hey, I can move anywhere I want, and I should get the rest of the world to conform to my own perspective. We talked about the color temperature of the light, which reflects the brightness of some of the different signs that were out there. I know some of the signs currently are being backlit or side lit, and there is some light that's coming out. He pointed specifically to the difference in lighting between, I believe, the Iris Hotel and the Marriott, where the Marriott was a brighter light or Kelvin temperature, where the Iris Hotel was more of an ivory, so it was something on the warmer side. And he again was talking about problems with navigating birds and bees, but most of them don't travel at night. So we had we did talk about the fact that in the darkness it is hard to see. There are certainly changes. Jessica, you put it so nicely. I would have simply said sidewalk is broken in a bunch of places, and you can easily trip if you're not seeing what you're doing, especially if you're out there in the parking lot of the movie theater. And he did acknowledge that, yeah, there may be some different requirements for commercial districts than there are for residential ones. And you need the light to see it. Otherwise, it becomes a real barrier on trade. But clearly that wasn't included in the most recent proposal. it sounded in some ways that this was based on a vendetta between two neighbors, where one neighbor had a spotlight and the other neighbor didn't like it. And so they said, well, I'm going to go ahead and get you. I'm going to change the entire town to say you can't have light. And I can't help feeling that this is a, individually, personally grievance fueled effort. My comment and my thought is that it is taking way too much time. It is nonsense. We live in an urban environment. We live in an urban area. As David Gladstone has pointed out, if we go dark, no one's going to notice because we are surrounded by Boston. So it is a pointless exercise. And I think that we are taking way too much time trying to, dance on the head of a pin to figure out how do you go ahead and reconcile the needs of one individual or a couple of individuals with the needs of the rest of the rest of the community.
Okay, can I, just because time is moving on here and we still have some other issues that we really need to talk about. If Aaron or Jessica, or Aaron, can you send everybody on the Small Business Development Committee a copy of the original EDAB list of issues?
They have it.
Okay, maybe
Yeah,
resend it
both
to-
the EDAB summary, the EDAB discussion summary, and Jessica wrote a brand new memo showing the
Right.
changes between the original draft and the most recent one that came out. Those are all in the agenda packet that everybody
Yeah,
received.
I don't
in
think
the past
everyone
week.
reads the agenda packet. I think if
That's
you
what I
sent
was
it
gonna
out
say.
individually,
If you can email it to everybody separate after this meeting.
Okay.
And everybody, if you can take a look, and if you have comments, send them to Aaron. We can't all discuss it among ourselves. That's not, the open meeting law doesn't allow us to do that. And then as a committee, I think the Small Business Development Committee needs to decide whether we should have a public hearing, which we can do at our next meeting, which is scheduled for sometime in early October, on this issue, and then take a vote. We can't take a vote on it until there's a public hearing. So if people want to do that, we can decide now, if we should have a public hearing. And then take a vote on the article. But I'd like to, and I think we need to do that and move on if we're going to finish by 10:30.
I would say agree to a public hearing. By the way, there is one last comment and then I'm gonna say let's defer to the next time. And that directly addresses the enforcement issue, and that is we're going to wind up then in a situation where you have a few activists snitching on everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that essentially aids the slide to much more of an authoritarian, repressive regime where a few individuals have outspoken influence on the behavior of everyone else. And I object strongly to having anything that is complaint centered, because that is just something that is an anathema to, I think, our values.
And I would second the chair that of what you suggested, that we definitely set up to have a public hearing at our next meeting to be able to dig further into this, because I sort of agree with a lot David is saying with regards to that. This is a lot of stuff for such a little gain. So I think that we need to definitely dig into this a little bit more, but I know we can't do it today.
Okay, let's plan for a public hearing. But if everybody, the most valuable public hearing we can have is if everybody's input is sent in advance of the public hearing so that we know what issues we want to discuss with the petitioners. And actually, we can send them the issues as well in advance so that they're prepared. The more we can do that. So take a look at the stuff that's going to be emailed. And the warrant article too, if you can put a link to the warrant, to the actual language of the warrant article, the current language, Aaron. Take a look, think about it, send all your comments to Aaron. And before our next meeting, we can send out a composite list so that all of us know what everybody else said or the issues that are on people's minds. Does that make sense as a way to move forward? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. This is important.
Yeah.
This is really important.
Mm.
The next thing is the new alcoholic beverage licensing policy.
Yeah, since we're already getting into staff updates, I'm going to let Jess take it away with that because she's done more research and all on this. But two things I wanted to bring up real quick is, first of all, at the top of the meeting, I did some research while we were getting presented to, and even if you do not attend the previous meeting, you can still vote on meeting minutes. That was actually specifically mentioned in the most recent board and committee handbook meeting that Tiffany Oliva covered. So David Lashinsky, he was, I didn't have him as attending the last meeting, but he can still vote on the meeting minutes. And that brings me to my second point is, Chris just mentioned it, but make sure you're at least looking through the agenda packet when we put it together, because there's a lot of information. I actually asked for all of the presentation slide decks to be shared at least a week in advance so that you all have the information before we get to the meeting. So just want to make sure that you all knew that you have a lot of this information. And I will absolutely send the email after this meeting with Dark Skies, because just like it was mentioned, it was recently filed. And so there's a lot more new information. But there's a lot of information that's usually in the agenda packet. So make sure that you are at least looking through that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Aaron.
Absolutely. Jess, do you want to, and I've just made you, yep, perfect.
And we have like 20 minutes to get through all this other stuff. So just be aware of that.
So EDAB talked about this last night too, when they're postponing the vote until the next meeting, and I imagine we'll do the same. There's a couple of questions that they had that I will also provide for you guys as well. But just to give you an update, as part of an overall bill that the state had passed, there's an opportunity for us to have a liquor license category change for those. We have 66 on-premises all alcohol licenses currently, and we have 13 beer and wine only for on-premises. They are all accounted for. There aren't any available ones at this point in time, and it's all based off of what the state allows us to have. So there isn't going to be an increase as an overall rule in terms of how many liquor licenses we have anytime in the near future. We had just gotten 2 or 3 more last year, and that's all we're expecting. So this category amendment opportunity will allow those 13 businesses that have beer and wine only to upgrade through a category amendment application to an all alcohol license. This doesn't impact our total overall number that we have available. It just allows us to make everybody able to have these all alcohol licenses. The big difference between our current license process and this one is that these upgrades are not transferable. So if a business closes or they decide they don't need the license anymore, it has to be given back to the town. It gets reconverted back into a beer and wine only, with it then being able to be given to a new business as a beer and wine. And that new business will then have to go through the same application process to change it to an all alcohol license. In terms of what this means for the local adoption process, it does have to go through town meeting. So while the state has made this possible, we have to adopt it locally for the businesses to be able to do this. So we will be required to bring the town meeting. If this was something that we were interested in pursuing, it would likely be the select board that would be the petitioner, unless somebody else came forward and wanted to take this on themselves. And we'd be potentially looking at spring 2026 if there's enough interest. The reason that it's being brought here is that it would be helpful to have our business-based boards and committees take a stand as to whether or not they think that this is something worthwhile to pursue, if it's going to be beneficial to the businesses. And then I had some potential vote language, which we can wait on, but just a motion to endorse the town's adoption and authorizing the chair, vice chair, and the staff to send a letter to select board regarding the endorsement. The questions EDAB had last night was basically, is there interest from these 13 businesses in actually pursuing in all alcoholic beverages? Did they want that, but they weren't able to get it because of the limited number we have? And then what the cost difference is between the two, which I do not have answers to yet. I do have the list of those businesses and we'll be beginning to do some outreach, but I don't have those answers yet. But this is just to give you an update as to what's going on and what the opportunity is. So I'll open that up to questions and be curious if you guys think it's a good idea.
Thanks, Jess. And again, we don't need to vote on this today. Does anybody have any really quick thoughts about this? Questions, Karen?
I just have a quick question is why it reverts back to, and the new people would have to petition again.
So it's because the licenses aren't transferable versus the existing ones are. It's just because we don't get to have more licenses for our community. It's just a matter of, I guess it's just you've had it for this long. So if you want to change it, you can, just as an opportunity for the existing businesses. But because it can't be transferred, it has to revert back because we don't get a number of license changed.
Okay, thank you.
David?
Yeah, just one very quick question. It sounds like this is a legislative requirement for us to even be able to do this transference, whether or not anybody is currently interested. So I would say that if somebody right now might say, now they're not interested, but in a year, unless we go through this, we have to, it'll have to be gone through at some point. My feeling is that we can get it done now when it's fresh. We just do it, take care of it, and then it doesn't really matter which businesses want to take advantage of it instantly. There will be some that will take advantage of it as their needs change.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So the deadline for fall's town meeting already passed, so this will be like a spring town meeting warrant article?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to quickly do the next one because when it was actually after the foie gras article, and then when we started talking about dark skies, EDAB started thinking about things we would like to know before we hear about a warrant article. And the dark skies article was the first one that we'd ever heard while it was still a draft. I mean, we didn't have a public hearing, but we knew about it and we had a conversation about it, and the proponents were there for our conversation, heard what our questions are. They ignored most of them, but I mean, the biggest one was separating the commercial areas out, but they didn't change very much based on our conversation. But as a result of those conversations, we decided to do a statement. Basically, it's a metric of the kinds of questions that we think town meeting proponents for town meeting articles should ask and think about before they submit an article. And I don't think that was attached to this agenda, but we should send that out because what I'd like is for a lot of the questions obviously are very related to small business as well. Things like, have you talked to the businesses that are going to be affected and what are the pros and cons from their point of view? Just basic stuff, which as many warrant article proponents, just like the dark skies one, as far as I know, did not in the first instance speak to any businesses to see what it meant for them to have to retrofit their spaces so that it was consistent with the requirements in dark skies. So we'll send that out. And again, if you have, if assuming that this group wants to use it as well, send additional questions or comments or whatever you have to Aaron, and we can have one document from both of these committees. I mean, our interests are aligned enough so that I think that works. We certainly don't need two of them. And last night we were talking about whether, I mean, there are a lot of other groups. The Public Health Committee actually has one. We're not aware of others, but maybe, I mean, the Planning Department probably should have one, and probably the building, I mean, probably a lot of other committees need it too. But this is a start. So we'll send that out and take a look and we can talk about it and send comments to Aaron and we can talk about it at our next meeting or the one after that. I mean, we would use this in the first instance for the Springtown meeting. Okay, David?
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that we had discussed this at some point a few years ago, the importance of doing a small business impact assessment to understand and be able to articulate what will happen given this particular warrant article that's coming up. Since
Yeah.
most, as you pointed out, Ann, nobody thinks about us, right? We just kind of get steamrolled under everything else. And being able to actually say, oh, sorry, guys, you can't steamroll us now without telling us about it first, at least as a start in that direction.
Well, this is not, I mean, unless town meeting votes that this is a requirement, which they may or may not do, it's not a requirement, it's only a suggestion, but hopefully people will take the suggestion and it will be, the whole process will be easier for them. We're going to talk to a couple of people who are town meeting members, and I have a neighbor on the advisory committee to see what this list means, how they would use it, just for some feedback from them. So, anyway, so that's everybody's homework for next time, along with the homework on the dark skies, so that we can get this moving and maybe approve it, assuming that you all want to do that for, at our December meeting. It sounds like or November meeting. Okay, the MBTA Green Line and Center Street lot studies updates are the last two things, and maybe we can do those in 10 minutes.
Yeah, because I can be very brief. There was a meeting, Transportation Board meeting at the end of July, where the MBTA came back and presented to them just like they did us earlier in the summer. At that meeting, Transportation Board had a lot of thoughts and opinions about the way that the project was moving along. There was a lot of parking that was brought back into the project. I don't have specific numbers right in front of me, but I can tell you from firsthand experience that the staff here in town has been working hard to get back a lot of the parking that was previously displaced due to the project along the Beacon Street corridor. So anybody that is still interested, again, the project is still moving along. They're still wanting to start as early as this fall. There is a tree planting committee meeting coming up on September 10th that the MBTA will be attending. There is another transportation board coming up on September 17th that the MBTA team will be attending. And then they're currently expecting to come before the select board on September 30th. I'm not sure if that's going to be a joint meeting with the select board and transportation board meeting. But all of these meetings, I can send whoever is interested the meeting info and how to register for the meeting so you can attend. But again, the project is still moving forward, but there has been a lot of parking. They heard you loud and clear, actually. And they've been working on bringing a lot of parking back into the fold.
Well, is the parking in the same areas that it was removed, or is the parking going to be put in places that are not necessarily as important because no one's going to use them? They're too far away.
It's in the same places that they were taken away from. They've just added them back. So it's instead of them completely removing a lot of that parking that you saw before, they've left a lot of that parking.
And how about trees? We'll get to save any of our trees?
That's what that specific meeting is about. I think tomorrow, the tree planting committee meeting, September 10th. But again, if anybody's interested, just send me a note and I can send you those meeting dates and links. Okay, Zach, do you want to take away this Center Street Lots update and the event tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Aaron. So the quick update on the Center Street Lots, we've had a busy summer with the consultants kind of mapping out a few future scenarios, possible visions for the Center Street Lots. And one of the main engagement events of this study is going to be taking place tomorrow evening at the Coolidge Corner Theater. We're holding an event called A More Walkable Brookline, during which Jeff Speck will be talking about not just walkability in Brookline and in Coolidge Corner, but presenting some illustrations for these different concepts of the future of the Center Street Lots. And there's going to be some live polling to get feedback from the audience. So really hope you'll join us. It's at the Coolidge Corner Theater tomorrow at 7, doors open at 6:30. And I'll send a link in the chat to RSVP.
Can I actually add something here? Because there's something about that just came onto my radar. It indicated how critical this actually is for our future well-being and health. King Arthur Flour is expanding their retail operations. And I don't know if those of you who know King Arthur Flour or not, but they, it turns out, are a major player in the high-end world of flour and also of cooking appliances and equipment. It turns out Coolidge Corner is on their short list of expansion targets. I had a discussion with their VP of operations that's actually evaluating this area. And one of the key things, and I asked, what are the drivers? Why are you interested in Coolidge Corner? I'm not trying to dissuade it because I think it was fantastic, but rather, and by the way, to give you an impact sense, this would be almost as big as Trader Joe's because this would be the only location that they would have in the area. It would bring, thousands of people in, all of whom are interested in, not simply going to this one store, but also potentially going to other places. It is such an amazing opportunity. I can't almost contain myself. But when I pressed on them to find out what is it about Coolidge Corner that's interesting, they said there were a couple of key things, and they did cite the fact that they were in Newbury Street over Christmas, and it was very successful for them. It'd be very successful no matter where they were. What they said here is you had great public transportation to bring people in, and great private vehicle parking options, because the stuff you're going to walk away with is 10 pounds of flour at a shot. And, most people aren't going to do that unless they can put it in a trunk in their car, or they have all the high-end appliances and cooking equipment and other kinds of things. Again, you can't easily do that on a T. They need a place that has plenty of convenient parking for that kind of an operation to be successful. So I talked about the fact that, yeah, we do have some street parking available. We have a Coolidge Corner lot is like a main place right behind it. They have visited here multiple times. They've seen, so they have seen the area, and they said, yeah, they think that was great. They like some of the feeder lots. They're very excited about Coolidge Corner. This is something that would help us without any questions moving forward. But it's also based on the fact that we need adequate parking for growth, and not simply to put our heads under a rock and pretend we're living out in a national park. Much as I love national parks, that's not where I moved. It's not where I am. So this Center Street parking lot has, study and discussion has got to recognize how important it is that companies are now actively evaluating this area, and parking is a critical aspect of that evaluation. They're rejecting Newbury Street because there's no parking. Rejecting it, even with all of their traffic. And that's something that's important to know.
Thanks, David.
I'm pumped, got to tell you.
It's a great, I've been to the one, I mean, if anybody's stopped at their place in Norwich, Vermont, it's an incredible operation. I don't know what they're thinking of here, but it's amazing.
Dave, can you mention very quickly the size space they're looking for? Because it's kind of like they're not a lot of them around.
Right. So they're looking for about 4,500 square feet and a minimum. They'd like, 5,000, 5,500. So they're looking in that range. And they've apparently been here multiple times over the last number of years. So they're patient. They're an established company. They're waiting for the right place to show up. And, as such, I had no clue. And I have a feeling a lot of our landowners also had no clue that we had a tenant like this, because so much property just changes hands before it ever hits the radars. Nobody knows about it. It never goes out into commercial. But guys, I got to tell you, this would be such a coup if we're able to bring them in.
Gabe, would this be for retail, or would they have their baking classes here?
Both.
No,
This would be baking classes. This would be retail.
Those baking classes bring people in from all over the country as a destination, which would bring new people and new to shop and to eat and to, to be in Brookline.
That's what
Exactly.
excites us.
They fill up in instantly.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can put
I agree. I think it would be absolutely a win for everybody here, including all the bakers that want to go ahead and stand out by themselves and stay in their own kitchens and not go and see anybody. But I mean, this would be just a win right across the board.
Well, thanks for that. I don't know if anybody.
So that was in support, Zach, of this meeting coming up to say, let's go there and talk about how important it is to have this lot be preserved and expanded, because it is the lifeblood of where we are going.
7 o'clock tomorrow night at the Coolidge. I mean, there are other opportunities as well, but there are a whole
Yeah.
lot of other conflict. I mean, the tree committee is the same. There are a bunch of other meetings tomorrow, I know. But thank you. Anybody else quickly? We have two
And
more.
I have one fast update on Brookline Bank. So our day one merger happened September 1st. We're now operating as a division of Beacon Financial Group. Eventually, the Brookline name will go away, and we're going from probably about 60 branches to 140 branches. And in the scope of things, it's going to give us a little bit more fighting weight. We'll be the size of Eastern Bank or Rockland, and it will allow us to offer additional things. But I just want to make everyone aware, the location of the headquarters is still going to be Boston. Half of our management is going to be with this. And it's really a combination of Brookline Bank and Berkshire Bank. And we're bringing two good banks together, and we'll be a larger regional bank with a local footprint in 6 geographic regions. So I just wanted to give you an update on that.
Thanks, David. John, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just curious, David, what will the bank be named?
Beacon Financial Group. Beacon is a beacon of light.
Yeah. So like financial group, not Beacon Bank or,
Well, it'll be Beacon Bank. It'll be a chartered bank in Massachusetts and beyond. We're going to have 6 geographic regions. We'll be in Vermont, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts. And the total integration will happen sometime in February.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Comments, thoughts?
Taste of Brookline's happening September 27th for anybody that hasn't heard about it yet or gotten a ticket. We've got 15 restaurants lined up, and we're hoping to have 200 people out on that Saturday from 12 to 2.
Brookline Day is on the 14th.
Right. Brookline Day on Saturday.
Sunday.
Sorry, Sunday. Thanks, Chris. Anything else? Okay. Thanks, everybody. A lot of work to do. Read the stuff that Aaron's going to send you. Send him comments because it's important, and this is our chance to be heard. So let's do it.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Thank
Jerry?
you.
Thank you.
Dan.
Yes.
Were you going to say something?
No, I just said thank you for a great meeting.
Oh,
Very,
thanks.
Very,
Thanks for
very,
coming.
very productive. Very, very informative.
Good. Thanks for coming.
Thanks,
All
Ann.
right. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.